Hello everyone and welcome to our third lecture in Unit 1. In this lecture we're going to take a look at the developments in South and Southeast Asia between the years 1200 and 1450. Alright, so let's begin. Alright, so give you a little bit of a section overview, kind of the broad traits and topics of this section. The history of Southeast Asia and South Asia, really to understand it, you need to understand the interactions between Hindus and Muslims. Now, these interactions between Hindus and Muslims, although sometimes they are violent, and we'll get into certain instances of that in this section as well as others down the line, they do lead to developments in religious thought, but as well as political, economic, art, and architectural advancements as well in mixture. And you'll see that with the various cultures and empires and dynasties that develop over time in this region. Now, what ultimately will happen, one of the guiding forces behind this this period of history, specifically in South Asia, that existed before this course, was the fall of the Gupta Empire in 550. And when that happens, you're actually going to have disunity in this area for the next 1,000 years. And this disunity is going to lead to a bunch of different separate political states that are going to develop between the northern and southern parts of India, where northern India is going to look a lot different than that of southern India. And ultimately, South Asia is going to remain this decentralized region that'll really be decentralized because regional local Hindu kingdoms are going to kind of spring up and create that disunity or decentralization. And in reality, the only real time the full Indian subcontinent or South Asia is going to be under control anyways by one group is going to be by or under British rule in the imperial or colonial period anyways. And then lastly, Buddhism is going to be this third religion that will play a role in this area as well in both regions of Southeast Asia and South Asia. But that is more going to be in a little bit in India with it getting forced out over time, but it'll be more in Southeast Asia. All right, so let's talk about Southern India. So Southern India is actually going to be more stable than what you see in terms of what happens in Northern India. And this is going to begin with the Chola dynasty. And the Chola dynasty, as you can see on the map there on the page, or on this slide, is going to be focused in southern India as well as Ceylon, or where Sri Lanka is today. And they're going to spread out and have influence really in a trading manner towards Southeast Asia. The Vijayanagara Empire, they're going to be founded by two brothers who are actually Hindus who in the Delhi Sultanate converted to Islam, trying to move up in that social structure because that was a big driving force, at least early on, for many Hindus to move or convert into Islam, as they thought they could move up the ladder chain. And as we'll see later on, that actually doesn't necessarily work for most, but they actually leave the Delhi Sultanate, go into southern India and found their own empire and go back or reconvert to Hinduism upon the establishment of that empire. Now, ultimately, that group is going to be overthrown by a group of Muslim kingdoms that will come in later on. Okay, excuse me. Now, we're into northern India, which is a lot different. When the Gupta Empire falls, you actually have a power vacuum. There really isn't a lot of control over big states in this area. And this leads to rival Rajput kingdoms who are Hindu in their religion to actually fight against each other and scrap it out for land and resources. And all this competition and warfare means that there's no centralized control or centralized government, which means that it's more fragmented, there's less control over the entire region, and it makes them vulnerable to attack by Muslim forces from the north, west, and the west. So what ends up happening is geographically they're actually pretty well protected, specifically directly to the west because of the Arabian Sea, and to the north because of the Himalayan mountains. But there are mountain passes to the northwest that the Muslim forces are able to come through and enter into South Asia or northern India. And eventually Islam's going to take hold in this region over several centuries, with it culminating in the beginning, at least, for the sake of this section, the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate when they take over, those Muslim forces take over the city of Delhi. Now, when the Delhi Sultanate takes over, they aren't necessarily welcomed by Hindus specifically because of how they treat them. Islam was a religion that was trying to get converts, actively seeking them. Hindus didn't really necessarily like that. Plus, in the Muslim faith and political structure of these groups, they would impose taxes on all non-Muslims, or what was called the jizya, and Hindus started to resent that extra tax they were paying. Another thing that was a negative for the Delhi Sultanate, outside of like what we saw in like the Abbasid Caliphate in Dar al-Islam or in Song, China, is they didn't have an organized, central bureaucracy, which made it difficult, even more difficult for them to impose policies over the region. And again, this is why those local Hindu kingdoms, led by the Rajputs and others, were able to maintain a localized control, and really why India in its history has been a decentralized area for the most part. Now, there are going to be some invasions they're going to have to focus on. The Delhi Sultanate will have to focus on. They wanted to push south, but the Mongols come knocking at their doorstep. They aren't able to extend southwards, but they are at least able to defend and stop the Mongols. But eventually they're going to lose to their descendants later on, the Mughals. All right, so we're going to move to religion here. In religion in South Asia, we have three to talk about: Hinduism and Islam, which you see here on this slide, and then we'll talk about Buddhism a little bit later, because we're separating Buddhism out because this interaction between Hinduism and Islam in South Asia is the key interacting point in understanding really kind of the actions that go on throughout this region. And you can see there's differences here, with Hinduism being polytheistic, valuing art specifically in terms of looking at deities and being very intricate, and they have a caste system that's very hierarchical, and they have a recognition of several different religious texts. Whereas in Islam, you're looking at the exact opposite in many of these cases. They're monotheistic. They disapprove of any visuals of Allah. They didn't like that to be like his image to be shown. Didn't think it should be shown or could be shown by humans. There's an equality for all believers. There isn't this caste system that's as rigid as what you see within the Hindu structure. And there's one specific religious text that they mainly follow, even though the Torah and the Bible play a role as well. But the Quran's the main text. And I put it here just to kind of reaffirm with you guys. Remember, South Asia's history is shaped by this relationship between these two religions and the people that follow them. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the arrival of Islam. Initially, what happens is Islam comes into this region through force. And eventually, it's going to the people that are bringing Islam in are going to change their tune, and it will come peacefully. And Islam isn't necessarily successful at first in its arrival into this region, because they were actively trying to seek converts, and because of that religious tax that was put on Hindus originally at the beginning, a lot of Hindus didn't see that as something that they should convert to. They didn't like those actions. So there's few converts to Islam, at least initially, with its arrival into South Asia. Now, what ends up happening is over time, as trade starts to pick up and become more linked in this region to the region of Dar al-Islam to the west, you see Islam take more of a hold, and you see more active conversion into conversion for people into Islam. And this becomes mainly popular in cities in this region as well as in Southeast Asia, because those are the trading centers. Now, Sufi Muslims are going to help aid in this conversion process for many Hindus, as Sufi Muslims start coming into this region, and they're more accepting of local traditions and mixing local traditions with their religion of Islam. So that they're really going to help play a role with expanding Islam into this region. And primarily what ultimately ends up happening outside of merchants in these areas converting to Islam and helping it take hold is lower caste Hindus see this equality factor that's pushed within the Islamic faith and they see it as a way that they can actually improve their social status. Now we'll talk about why that becomes a misnomer for most a little bit later. But most of the converts that end up changing over from their original religion to Islam in South Asia are Buddhists, because many of them are tired of the corrupt monks that rule in the system at the time, as well as Muslim attacks previously on the monasteries of this region had actually really disorganized the religion a lot. And so you have this religion that was in upheaval and turmoil, and Islam kind of swoops in and gains a lot of converts from Buddhists into Islam. And this ultimately what it does is turns Buddhism into a minority religion in its birthplace. And for all intents and purposes, Buddhism is going to kind of get kicked out of its homeland, at least for a period of time. All right, so the social structure in South Asia, pretty straightforward. When you're looking at India, it's a caste system. It's the longest continuing continuity in Indian history. So when you guys are thinking about continuity and change, if you get a CCOT question, the biggest continuity in Indian history is going to be the caste system. Now, the caste system is very inequitable, but it does bring stability and organization to a region that's decentralized. Because you have all these different Rajput Hindu kingdoms in the north, different changing dynasties in the south, but there's one commonality, and it's the caste system itself of Hinduism for the most people. And even though it's an inequitable system and it's rigid in that fact that you have these various classes, it is flexible in that it allows for the accommodation of newcomers. Specifically, Muslim merchants can come in, not convert to Hinduism, still maintain their religion, and actually slide into the caste system based on their occupation as merchants and play a significant role. And what you end up seeing in the social structure in South Asia at this time is we previously talked about how many low-caste Hindus wanted to convert to Islam because they thought that they could escape their position. Some do, but most don't, because there's a lack of money for them, a lack of education, and a lack of opportunity for many to actually move or improve their status, even when they actually convert to Islam. And it's because of this sliding in flexibility to or accommodation of newcomers into the caste system, even if they don't practice the religion this caste system was developed on. And you see Islam adapt this social structure of the region. So Islam will actually, or Muslims in these areas will actually adapt their practices within the religion to fit the practices of that region, such as what you see on the screen. Hindu women were restricted to a separate social sphere. So were Islamic women, even though in Dar al-Islam we talked about how Islamic women had a lot more rights and openness compared to others like in Christianity or Judaism. Cultural interactions in South Asia. We have intellectual and cultural achievements shared between South Asia and the Middle East. So this is a good connecting point from the last section to this one, because we see Arab scholars building off of Indian achievements and connections with the Indian or South Asian world. An example of this is a big one for you guys is the development of the Arabic numeral system, which starts in India. Arabic scholars and mathematicians adopt it, and then they transfer it to Western Europe. And now that's the numeral system that we use today. You see architecture with mixed patterns of intricate art from Hindu with the geometric patterns of Islam. An example here is the Qutb Minar, which you see here in this picture, that shows both of those principles. And then even then, you have a development of a new language, which signifies this mixture of cultures and advancements between the Hindu language and Arabic language, as well as even Farsi that comes from like Persia and more Central Asia. And this is the actual official language of Pakistan today, and it's a result of this mixing going on during this period. All right, we have the Bhakti movement. The Bhakti movement starts in the 12th century, and it begins with Hindus who start drawing on the teachings that talk about emotion in your own spiritual life within the Hindu religion, and in particular, taking that, focusing on emotion, and being attached to a particular deity within their religion itself. And this is the Bhakti movement beginning in southern India. And it's very appealing because of these principles, but also because this movement didn't discriminate specifically against women, which we talked about on a previous slide. Women in Hinduism, for the most part, were restricted to a specific sphere, so they weren't discriminated against. And then low-caste Hindus also had more of equality in this system. And it became a highly popular movement. You can compare this movement to that of the Sufi Muslims who come into this region or who play a role throughout Dar al-Islam, who focus on a lot of similarities. You can see the four similarities between these two groups. They both were focused on mystical movements or looking at the mythological ideas and interactions within the religions they followed, Hinduism and Islam. They both emphasized inner reflection of yourself to connect to a particular deity. In Hinduism, it depends on which one. In Islam, it's Allah. And then there was less emphasis on adherence to the strict beliefs of the religion, and more on about appealing to everybody's kind of big ideas, which means outsiders can kind of come in, and it's more appealing to a wider scope. And then both groups or both movements help spread their various religions. All right, now we're going to move on. We just have a couple slides left. We're going to talk about Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is strongly influenced by South Asia, in particular, Indian merchants. They're influenced by China as well, but we talked about that a little bit earlier in this course, and we'll talk more about it moving forward. Basically, what you see precious metals and textiles coming from South Asia being traded for spices from Southeast Asia. And you see Hinduism and Buddhism introduced into this region from South Asia. Okay, and this is going to become really where the home of Buddhism is moved to, even though it started in India. The home is really going to be in the Southeast Asian region, and it starts because of these connections and influences. Now, this is a very strategic region in that if you can control it, you're going to have a huge trade influence or control of trade between South Asia, so India, and the whole Indian Ocean basin as we move forward, and East Asia, so mainly China and Japan. And this is very comparable to what we see with the states controlling Dar al-Islam, like the Abbasid Caliphate or the Mamluk Caliphate or Sultanate in the Middle East, and what you see there. They control the trade in between East Europe and Africa. Same thing here. Now we have some various kingdoms that you guys need to know about. Srivijaya and the Khmer Empire, we're actually going to take a look at here in this lecture. All right, so Srivijaya, they were a Hindu kingdom that was based on the island of Sumatra. And they primarily maintained their power through naval power and taxing of trade. And through really controlling these two main straits, the Strait of Malacca and the Sunda Strait. By controlling these areas, they could tax all the trade that was moving either from Southeast Asia itself or East Asia or from South Asia. And that's a huge, huge power base for them in controlling that. And they become the center of the spice trade for quite some time. Now the capital is Palembang. Palembang becomes a center of Buddhist teachings, even though Srivijaya was a Hindu kingdom. Buddhism does come in. Both practices are used in it. By using both of those practices, it becomes an area that's acceptable to merchants, which further helps in their controlling of taxing of the trade, as well as becoming a center of the spice trade. All right, the Khmer Empire. This is our land empire example that we're covering here, whereas Srivijaya was a sea trade empire. But the Khmer Empire, they're near the Mekong River area in Southeast Asia. It's modern-day Cambodia for the most part today. And really where they actually rise is through the development of a complex irrigation and drainage systems because of the huge amounts of water in this rainforest-type climate that they live in. When they actually develop these systems, they get economic prosperity because they can control it and use it to their advantage. So like, for example, in irrigation, they're able to use irrigation to have several rice harvests per year, which means they have enough food, population grows, and so forth. to where their irrigation excuse me, their drainage systems, they're able to develop an effective drainage system that helps reduce the impact of these monsoonal rains in this rainforest area, where they can actually build these big structures in across the area. The capital is Angkor Thom. You can see it here as Angkor on the map. And their architecture, if you look at this region, is really shows the Indian influence that's coming from South Asia, because you have a mixture of Hindu and Buddhist architectural principles, and obviously monasteries and religious shrines to both of these religions. Now, initially the Khmer Empire was Hindu, but at some point they did convert to Buddhism. An example of this conversion, as well as the architectural influences, can be seen here with Angkor Wat, which is a very beautiful, big structure. Hopefully you guys, if you do go to this region, you can visit it someday. But ultimately what will happen is in 1431, the Sukhothai kingdom, which comes from Thailand, they invade and push the Khmer rulers out of this region. All right, guys, this is our reflection question. You should do this. This is for your own benefit. So in 1 to 3 paragraphs, explain how various beliefs and practices in South and Southeast Asia affected society and the development of states. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you later.